Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Amazon.com today. A lot of Western women are scratching their heads, wondering why men in Western countries are not approaching them. And while many of these women sit alone on the weekend, wondering why they can't get a man to pay attention to them, they don't understand how hostile the environment has become between men and women in the last 5 to 7 years. Now, the main reason why most men these days are not approaching women is due to the Me Too movement and the legal standard of trust and belief that has been established in the West. Now, the Me Too movement was started back in the late 20-teens by a group of feminists, and this group of feminists said that they wanted to stop sexual harassment and sexual assault in the entertainment industry. And as they hoped to meet this goal, what unfortunately happened was this caused a rift between men and women in the Western world, because most men could not trust most women after the standard of trust and belief was established. Now, most men before the standard of trust and belief had faith that if they went out here and approached a woman, if they got rejected, what they could do is just go and move on. Moreover, if a woman went on a date with a guy and things did not work out, both that man and that woman could go their separate ways, and they could both move on as related to their personal lives. However, after the Me Too movement came along and started creating the standard of trust and belief, most men could not trust women, because under the legal standard of trust and belief, most men could possibly wind up losing things as related to their personal lives, and in some extreme cases could possibly wind up losing their jobs, or even worse, wind up losing their freedom if this woman decided to file criminal charges with a district attorney. And because most men are afraid of losing intangibles that are important to them in order to survive, such as their personal reputation, their professional reputation, their job, and their freedom, most men do not want to approach Western women because the risk at this point is just too great. And because the risk is just so great, this is why most Western men are avoiding Western women, because in the standard of trust and belief, a woman could just simply make an allegation, and with that allegation, this man could lose his professional reputation, his personal reputation, and could possibly wind up losing his freedom if this woman goes out here and takes those allegations and presents them to a district attorney and has that man arrested for a possible crime. This man could possibly wind up losing everything, and as that man loses everything, this woman could just on her word alone destroy this man's life. And because most men don't want to wind up losing their ability to be free in a Western society, what most men are doing is cutting off all contact from Western women, because any contact with a Western woman could possibly wind up with that man in a situation where he could possibly wind up losing his job and his ability to make a living, and lose his professional reputation, which is going to allow him to make contacts to be able to make that living. And in the most extreme cases, he fears losing his freedom. So he's lost his ability to have any incentive to pursue relationships with women, because pursuing a relationship with a woman in the West basically puts a man in jeopardy of losing everything. Now, the Me Too movement's feminists created this whole standard back in 2018 when they waged a campaign to go after comedian Bill Cosby and wanted to go out here and make an allegation saying that he went out here and assaulted over 60 women. Now, as this escalated, what happened was women were making allegations against other men, such as Harvey Weinstein. And when these women saw Fox News reporter Gretchen Carlson receive a $20 million settlement from Roger Ailes, that's when white women's hypergamy kicked in, and they started making allegations against white men. And as they started making these allegations against white men, this made it where the entire social dynamics between men and women got bad, and they became even worse when a legal standard was established with the conviction of Bill Cosby on some fabricated assault charges against Andrea Constand, and that took us from the standard of rule of law to the standard of trust and believe. And once we wound up under the legal standard of trust and believe, men could not trust women as related to having interpersonal relationships with them. And because men could not trust women as related to having interpersonal relationships with them, what happened was most men in countries like America and the West began to withdraw socially from social situations, because in order for a man to survive, that man needs to be able to find a way to feed, clothe, and house himself. And in Western society, for a man to do this, he needs to have a job. And with the standard of trust and believe being established, a man could not go out here and trust women to look to approach a woman, because under the feminist standard of trust and believe, a simple good morning could be interpreted as a case of sexual harassment, and that woman could run to the human resources department and have that man either disciplined or have that man terminated for simply saying something like good morning, or simply going out here and doing something like asking that woman out on a date at a job. Both of those minor incidents back about 50 or 60 years ago, before the feminist movement, would be something that would be brushed off back then if a woman rejected a man. However, in this era of trust and believe, some women take these gestures to the extreme and can go out here and run to the human resources department to make a claim of sexual harassment, and that can be used by the human resources department to terminate a man's employment simply on this woman's word, because the company fears liability. And because the company fears liability and fears being sued, what many men out here in companies are doing right now is cutting off all contact with women. And if they have to, they only talk about business, because if they get personal with that woman may take a personal interaction and turn it into a claim or allegation. And that allegation can basically be the thing that can destroy a man's ability to work and ability to make a living in society. And with most men needing jobs for their survival, they have gone out here and adapted to the situation. And this is why men refuse to approach women, because approaching a woman in today's society is seen as a liability for a man. And men don't want to go out here and just go out here and talk to a woman and then have that turned into something that could cost them their job, cost them their professional reputation, and even in the most extreme cases, cost them their freedom. Now, what has exacerbated this entire situation are these new look-back laws that have been established by states like New York and California. This has even made things worse between men and women, because with these look-back laws, which allow people to sue a man as related to an interaction that he had years ago, what is happening is these women are making these allegations. Oh, a man abused them, a man assaulted them, and they're filing civil suits to make claims that these men did something in the hopes of getting compensation. And while we have a lot of reports of people like Bill Cosby and Sean P. Diddy Combs being sued by entertainers like Cassie, which is what happened to Diddy, and many Jane Doe women suing men like Eric Adams and others, what is happening is that this new law compounds the issues as related to the Me Too movement, creating a further rift between men and women, and further de-incentivizes most men from looking to approach women as related to relationships. Most men don't want to approach a woman these days because the Me Too movement basically made it where most men fear losing their freedom, and many more men fear losing everything that they have worked for and built, because with these look-back laws in places like New York and California, many men have even less incentive to approach a woman, because what that woman can do is go out here and create a narrative regarding any sort of social interaction and say that this social interaction was harassment or assault, and use this as a way to file a civil lawsuit against a man years later. And this further de-incentivizes men to approach women, because when he sees any sort of woman, he understands that this woman can possibly cost him everything. And this is what many men makes them motivated to leave women alone. The big problem with these laws and this interpretation of law is that it basically creates a rift between men and women, because it penalizes men for going out here to approach a woman. And this legal interpretation of law as related to the look-back laws and the Me Too movement standard of trust and believe make it where, again, I'll repeat it again, men just don't trust women. And in order for a man to have a relationship with a woman, a man needs to trust a woman, and a woman needs to have faith in a man. Unfortunately, you cannot build that faith or trust in Western society, and you can't build that faith and trust, because if a man needs to work to survive, which is what God made men to do, he made men to do labor. If that man cannot go out here and do labor, then he cannot go out here and look to pursue a relationship with a woman. And that's how women in Western society who have become feminist indoctrinated have become a hindrance to a man. And this is why they cannot find a man to want to pursue as related to having a relationship with them, because the men cannot lead the woman, because her natural hypergamy leads to her looking to go out here and get a guaranteed payday from the courts. And if she doesn't like a man, what she can do is remove that man from social circles by making an allegation, because again, under the standard of trust and belief, a man is no longer innocent until proven guilty. No, a man is considered to be guilty until he's proven innocent. And in many cases, he can't really prove it, because in many cases, it's he said, she said. And because in our gynocentric court system, it's he said, she said, and they go along with the woman, what happens is the man has no incentive to pursue relationships with women. And because he fears losing his freedom. This is why most men don't want to approach women, because approaching a woman could lead to a man winding up being homeless, winding up becoming impoverished, winding up becoming in a place where he can never get hired again. And many women, they're sitting there scratching their heads, wondering how we got to this point where men don't want to approach women. Well, most men are natural builders, and they're looking for a woman to be a wife. But if he can't find a woman to be a helpmeet to help him build anything, what he's going to do is leave the women alone. And in some extreme cases, he may wind up going to get a passport to go get a foreign woman, because that woman will go out here and want to submit to his authority and possibly be a possible helpmeet. Unfortunately, the Western laws make it where no man can go out here and build or have a motivation to build a life and a family with a Western woman, because this woman has been incentivized by the government to tear anything a man builds down, and been incentivized to tear anything a man builds down, because the government basically wants to try to make women protect them. But the irony is, in their efforts to protect them, what they are doing is making it where it is impossible for men and women to have relationships, and making it impossible for a man and a woman to have a relationship, because a relationship requires, again, faith in God and trust in men. But you can't build trust when you have trust and believe, making it where the legal standard is so extreme that a simple allegation by a woman can cost a man his job, can cost a man his professional reputation, and could possibly lead to him dealing with criminal charges that can take away his freedom. This is the hostile environment that men have to navigate, and because the environment is just too hostile, most men are just cutting off contact from women, and they're cutting off contact because freedom is an important intangible for a man's survival. And this is the thing that does not resonate with most women, because many who were a part of groups like the Me Too movement and the Adult Survivors Act, people who make those claims, while they're caught up in their feelings about the power they're having over men, they can't see how they're creating a rift between future generations of men and women who look at how a man can lose his entire reputation and lose everything he worked for, trying to defend allegations that in some cases may possibly not be true at all, and in other cases are just cash grabs for insurance, because they know that these individuals like P. Diddy Combs are a part of a corporation. What these women want to do is get a payday, but this costs men and women and boys and girls the chance to pursue relationships and go out here and be fruitful and multiply the way the Most High wants people to do. Because the Most High, what he wants men and women to do is be fruitful and multiply. But these written social rules and new written anti-social rules are making it where men and women can't come together. And this is where many Western women don't understand how damaging the Me Too movement was to Western women. And they don't understand because a lot of women get in their feelings about the power that they're having and the whole social stigmas of these movements, not understanding that many of the women who were a part of these movements were outside of traditional female social circles, and many of those women, they were participating in antisocial behavior like the casting couch or being a side piece, or going out here and participating in actions like groupies do, where they have casual sex. And now that they have gotten older and aged out of the entertainment industry, what a lot of, or even politics or business, they want to go out here and rewrite the narrative unfortunately, as they rewrite the narrative, they create new social rules that make it where it is nigh impossible for men and women to come together and be fruitful and multiply the way the Most High wanted them to do, and have it where men can go out here and lead a woman. It makes it where the man doesn't want to pursue relationships with women, and he'd rather just stay in a small home or in a room with a bowl of herbs than deal with all of the contention he has to deal with as related to courting the modern Western woman. The modern Western woman, while she's caught up in her feelings of power as related to filing lawsuits and getting men fired, doesn't see where this is making it hard for future generations to go out here and pursue relationships. Moreover, she doesn't see how this is going to make it harder for her, because after this small group of women get the settlement, many other women out here aren't going to be able to find a husband or have a relationship, and their whole life is going to wind up on a road of misery. And this is where many women are right now. They're frustrated and they're angry because they want to pursue relationships with men. They want men to make that first step in approaching them because that's an example of leadership to them, but they can't get a man to approach them. And because they can't get a man to approach them, many of them are wondering why men are hesitant and reticent to pursue relationships. But the reason why men these days are reticent and hesitant to pursue relationships is because if they just make that first step, it can possibly be seen by some emotional woman, if they're on the job, as harassment. And if they're in the streets or they're introduced by a friend, they could possibly say this man participated in some sort of crime if he goes for a walk with them or if he takes her out for coffee. And it's these fears of losing a man's freedom that are the thing that make it where dating these days in courtship is hard, because a man has everything to lose. And the only way for this to change is that we've got to get rid of the standard of trust and believe, and we've got to get rid of these look-back laws, which the state of New York wants to continue extending. These type of laws, again, do damage to the relations between men and women, and the whole thing is we need to be back to a rule of law, because under rule of law, men and women are equally accountable, and under rule of law, a man and a woman have to go, if there is a claim, they have to go to a criminal court and let that man have his day in court. Moreover, that woman has to take accountability for her actions in that day in court. So we really have to get back to a standard of rule of law if many of these single women don't want to spend their weekends at home alone or at the bar drinking away their pain. We have to get back to the standard of rule of law, because under the standard of rule of law, men and women are equal, but under trust and believe, men and women are unequal, and it gives an unequal advantage to many feminists, and those feminists abuse that power. But their abusing of that power is the thing that's keeping many women single out here, and possibly single for the rest of their lives. And this is where we are right now as related to the world of men and women in relationships. It's a hostile environment, and it's not one that's beneficial to men, because no man can trust a woman, and if he can't trust you, he can't work with you towards building, because everything he builds, he fears will be torn down. So since he fears everything is going to be torn down as related to his home and his family and his ability to build wealth in this country, what is happening is most men are staying away from women. And the only way for this to change is we've got to go from the standard of trust and believe to rule of law. And even further, we've got to get men and women to start having faith in God, because God made men and he made women for men. But the whole thing is, with this whole trust and belief system, men cannot trust women. And if they can't trust you, they can't have any motivation to approach you, because if they can't trust you to go out here and do right by them, then a man has no incentive to try to look to approach you in the hopes of starting something with you. Now, if you want to learn how we got here as related to this hostile environment between men and women, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashware's The iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you want to learn why so many women out here are single, you can pick up my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. And while the book details why so many black women are single, it also details why so many modern women are single, and many reasons why we have a paradigm of failure that keeps many women from getting closer to men. And if you want to go out here and see me do more videos about relationships, you can also send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella. Discover the dark side of love in this goth and lovely romance with Spinsterella. Get Spinsterella in paperback and e-readers at your favorite online bookseller today. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.